Well, the British government says it will appeal after the UK's High Court ruled it must win the approval of Parliament before leaving the European Union. The government had insisted MPs should not get to vote on the decision since it was already approved by popular vote. But the judgment is the biggest stumbling block now for Brexit since the UK-EU referendum in June. But those who brought the case said it was a victory for democracy.
I've never challenged the result of the referendum. In fact, I voted for Brexit in the referendum for the sole reason that I wanted power to be returned from Europe to the British Parliament. But I did not think it was right for the government then just to bypass Parliament and try to take away my legal rights without consulting Parliament first.
The result today is about all of us. It's not about me or my team. It's about our United Kingdom and all our futures. It's not about how anyone voted. Every one of us voted for the best country and the best future. This case was about process, not politics.
Well, let's cross live now to Simon McGregor-Wood in London with more on what's happening and just happened at the High Court. Simon, this was a huge blow for Theresa May. Just tell us how the process goes forward now.
Well, she has indicated, the government has indicated that it would appeal this decision. It is a blow for her. She felt, and her cabinet ministers felt, that the referendum gave her, the executive of the British government, the right to initiate the negotiations with the European Union, so-called Clause 50, without further consultation with Parliament. She felt she was on sure democratic footing by making that decision. This judgment by the High Court, which is not the highest court in the land, but it is a senior court, suggests that she was wrong because, as the claimant stated, the initiation of the negotiation process that will withdraw this country away from the European Union significantly affects the rights of British citizens, and those sorts of decisions cannot be made in the judgment of the court today without the consultation and approval of Parliament, which in terms of the British Constitution and its history is where the British people deposit their power, if you like. So it's a setback for the idea that the Prime Minister can go on her own and make this decision as an executive authority. She will now have to, before triggering the negotiations, consult with Parliament. It will at least slow the process down.
At the very least, indeed. Because, tell me, Simon, do you know of any legal precedent or any case in history whereby the Supreme Court has overruled the High Court on a decision this size?
I'm not familiar with it, particularly on an issue which is so sensitive and constitutionally unprecedented. I think the judges, the three of them who looked at this material over the course of the last few days, understood that they were straying into very difficult and unprecedented, uncharted constitutional waters. It would be strange if a 9-judge panel of the Supreme Court, sometime in early December, we understand, chose to counter the argument. But there were good arguments on either side. What will clearly now happen is that the process of negotiating with the European Union, beginning that process, will have to be, if the court's decision is upheld, be thrown open to Parliament. The likelihood then is that the process will be delayed. But here is the big constitutional question coming down. If the Supreme Court of this country upholds today's decision, it is then the responsibility of individual members of Parliament to decide whether or not to go ahead with the Brexit. You know, we have the constitutional, the democratic initiative of the referendum. We know that before the referendum, a majority of members of the British Parliament favoured staying in the European Union. But given the referendum result, how many of those members of Parliament will vote against the Brexit in any future vote on the negotiations in direct opposition to the results of the referendum? It might delay the process, but it's difficult to see the majority of members of Parliament actually rejecting the idea of Brexit, given the results of the referendum.
Okay, interesting perspective. Simon, thanks so much for that, live from London.